Let's see if this works. I'm not sure if this is going to work. Let's see. Okay. Are we rolling? Yes. Okay, cool. All right. If you are tapped in on this, I'm going to bump it on Twitter and Blue Sky right now real quick and going to stream NHL 25. The Rangers and the Predators are playing tonight. This is NHL 25. It's simulated up to the day. I'll be sure to take Panarin out of the lineup so we get the most accurate. I'll set the lines to what they were at morning skate, and we'll get rolling. So I'm going to bump this on Twitter and Blue Sky. 25 Hawking the latest news of the day. Ahead of the game tonight. Okay, so that's up. Okay, so we gotta set our lineup. I was thinking about playing, but at the same time, it feels like if I'm playing the computer, I'm not going to be able to do as good of a job as far as explaining what I want to talk about. And if I can just put the controller down and talk, I think I'll do a better job. Where is the lineup tweet? No, I don't want Laviollette's help. Molly should have had the lineup out earlier today, right? Let's see. Okay. Morning skate. Okay. So, Cooley. Yeah, I don't need A to dismiss. Yeah, if you see me pan over, I'm currently doing the setup stuff through my capture card, which is connected to my computer. So if I occasionally glance over to my right, that's why. All right, so Cooley, Heedle, Lafreniere, Kreider, Trocheck, Berard. I don't know if he's up yet in the lineup. Zibanejad there. I have no idea who that is. I have not heard that name in a hot minute. Edstrom, Carrick, Veazey. Okay, I don't think... Are any of those guys even up? Okay, Carrick's up, so we can put him in the lineup. So we'll put Carrick there. Veazey's on the right wing. Kako is here. We gotta scratch Panarin because we want to do this accurately. Left wing. Why is Panarin not there? What the hell? I just saw him. We want to take him out. Or do we have to do it this way? Okay, we'll do it that way just for argument's sake. And then we need to go call up. We need to go call up Edstrom, and then we can actually start this game. Well, we definitely need to scratch him. Options, scratch player, yes. Okay. All right, now we need to go call up Edstrom. Confirmed. Do we need anyone else? They sent Mackey down. They sent them down. Okay. So I think we're good once we put him in. I'm not fixing that. I don't care about the Wolfpack. We want to change this to NHL. It's going to take a second. We want to activate Edstrom. Carrick, Veazey. Okay. All right, that's the forwards. Defense. We have no Miller, so that needs to be Ruedel. Yes. Okay, so Fox. And then defense. We have Jones with Fox, Lindgren with Schneider, and then Vakanainen. That's right. We don't I don't think the Rangers have Vakanainen on the roster in this. I think I need to call him up, or he might be injured. Let's check that real quick. No, okay. So he's got to be down in the system. Defense. I don't see him here. So being that Vakanainen should be here, but he's not, and I don't know exactly why at the moment. We're gonna roll with what it has at the moment on defense with Miller out. So what is that? This is Jones, Fox, Lindgren, Schneider. Oh, that's why. It still has Trouba on the roster. It goes to show how good a job EA Sports does with this franchise. We'll do that trade later. We'll put... it's not like it really matters. I'll fix that later. Let's get into this simulation because that's really what's here, why I wanted to do this. I mostly just wanted to talk about the news today because a lot happened today. So we're going to play the game. I think it's set for 8-minute periods. Why is it not letting me? CPU versus CPU. Cool. Okay. All right. So I'm going to let that go. We'll set the game settings. We'll do 7 minutes. Feels like plenty. I don't know if it's going to let me do it from here, but we'll see. If not, we can speed this up in retrospect. Yeah. So we'll do 7 minutes. All right. So now that this is actually going to get going, I'm going to just start talking about the news of the day, and occasionally I'll talk about the game as it's developing, but the New York Rangers are reaching what I would conservatively call a tipping point, a Rubicon. And as far as how a season develops, as far as achieving your goals, traditionally speaking, you want to get this adversity out of the way as soon as possible. If you are of the opinion that this team is talented enough and good enough, frankly, to make something special happen, I struggle to envision a world where you think right now, based on where we're sitting, that this is fixable, that the Rangers are going to be able to get this back on the tracks without more action. And there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different shapes action could take as far as what you could do. I don't think you will see Laviolette get fired unless it becomes wholly untenable. I think the fact that Kakko came out and was so viscerally direct and blunt in a way that we just don't see NHL players with the media, I don't know how well that bodes for Peter Laviolette, but I don't think anything about the last few seasons, the way the Rangers have handled and treated Kaapo Kakko, would lead you to believe that he was a part of their long-term vision, that he was somebody that the Rangers were planning on building around and wanted to be a part of their future based on a lot of different factors. You know, I tweeted about it during the day, earlier in the day, and I had a few people push back on it, but if on the chance you didn't see that, but you're watching this now, I think the simple matter of the fact is the Rangers drafted Kakko second overall 5+ years ago now. You know, he's class of 2019. He's the Jack Hughes draft. And the Rangers took him as an 18-year-old who had been playing against men in the Finnish Elite League as a teenager. And there was a presumption based on that he was ready for NHL action at 18 years old. And if you'll recall the consensus, and look, this isn't rocket science. Prospect evaluation in every sport is a challenge. It's not something that there's an exact science or formula or recipe for. But the logic at the time was that Kakko was more NHL ready than Jack Hughes. That Kakko could be dropped in to an NHL roster right away and be expected to be a functional NHL player. Of course, that's not what happened. The Rangers drafted Kakko second overall, and he was put in a really difficult situation. And this does not absolve him of blame. I think some people misunderstood what I was saying and when I said that the Rangers put him in a position to fail. But environment matters. And part of your development as an NHL player is being put in a position to succeed, where you feel like you have a path to contributor status, have a path to being taken seriously. And the Rangers did not put Kakko in a position to succeed. You know, you go back And you look at the underlying numbers, you look at the counting stats from Kakko's rookie season, that 2019-2020 Rangers team, which was one of the worst defending teams in the entire NHL. And the game was far too fast for him. At the time, midway through that 2019-2020 season, maybe a little bit later than that, I had Jay Fresh Hockey on the podcast I was doing at the time, which I don't do anymore, but was kind of the genesis of the Liberty Blue podcast. But when I had Jay Fresh on, I asked him about this, and he had said, think about it if you, the current skill level you have, tried to play a level up at whatever you were doing. If you went from playing at basketball at LA Fitness to playing in a men's league, if you were playing in a men's league and you went up to some semi-pro competition, that's kind of what it looked like for Kaapo Kakko that first season. There was a real struggle for him to adapt to the speed of the NHL game, but being the rules what they are for roster stuff, where if you are 18, 19, you can't play in the AHL. So the Rangers' options were to A, send Kakko back to Finland to play in the Finnish Elite League, or B, let him drown at the NHL level. And I really do think that part of the Rangers' struggles in developing and getting the best out of Kakko, part of the reason it's been a struggle to get the best out of Kakko is that the Rangers have never really put him in a position where he could succeed. And look, I understand there are a lot of people who are fed up with the defenses of Kakko. Quite a few of my friends are quite tired of the defenses of Kakko. But I don't think the Rangers ever fully understood what Kakko's limitations were. And they just felt that if he played enough, he'd figure it out eventually. And some of that, I think, is organizational hubris, just the thinking that, well, we'll figure it out. We've got all these talented players. Some of them have to work out eventually, right? And I think that type of thinking is both based in logic, that all of your draft picks aren't going to pan out, which I agree with, but at the same time, I think it's also a little self-defeating when you have this my way or the highway mentality with these young players. You look at the handling of Lias Andersson, of Vitaly Kravtsov, now of Kakko, and there are others, but Nils Lundqvist comes to mind as well. Pavel Buchnevich comes to mind. These players who were drafted relatively highly, or in Buchnevich's case, had pretty solid developmental track records and weren't able to really maximize their opportunities. And some of that is just you're a really young player with a lot of potential on bad teams. I think that's more of the case for Kravtsov and Lias Andersson, that neither had eye-popping or jump-off-the-screen skills. You could say the same thing for Kakko. And the Rangers just kept waiting and waiting and waiting, and that wasn't necessarily the wrong course of action. I'm always a believer in giving your young guys opportunities, but I think part of the issue, and this is reflective of a larger organizational issue, when you think, ooh, that's a nice goal from Luke Schenn, that is a really nice goal from the high slot, these animations are horrendous. Whoever put this game together, I don't understand why they've leaned so hard into the arcadey presentation, because no NHL player is sliding across their belly through the neutral zone. And Riley Smith in front of the net front, Shesterkin can't get over, no defenseman in sight. But back to the larger topic at hand and why I'm only simulating the game. I'm not playing the game, so I can focus on my train of thought, because I do get distracted very easily. When you think about the Rangers during that window from, say, 2018 through 2021, from firing Vigneault through the hiring of Chris Drury, you had a lot of players thrown at the wall, and the organizational perspective was, we're going to lose a lot of games, but if we figure out who's good on a losing team, we know they'll deserve to be here when we're a winning team. And Kakko in particular is a complicated bag. Yes, he is undoubtedly not what you are looking to take second overall. I think we can all agree that he has not lived up to the expectations that are commiserate with being drafted that highly. I think the Rangers didn't do enough to facilitate his growth during his key years. And some of that is the Rangers' fault, that they didn't keep him in Finland the extra year, that during COVID, a lot of these guys, these younger guys, especially these international players, you move halfway across the world as a 19-year-old You don't have English as a first language. You definitely have a little bit of an anxious reality where you are probably living alone or you're living with a teammate, and that was facilitated by the team if you're living with a teammate. And that's an awkward social situation to be in where you don't want to be overextending yourself. You don't want to be intruding on other people's space because ultimately they're doing you a favor. And for Kako in particular, I know firsthand that he had a really good friendship with Alexander Georgiev when Georgiev was on the team. We know that during his rookie and second seasons with the Rangers that Kako lived relatively close to Brendan Smith. Brendan Smith, not a great player, not advocating that the Rangers should have kept Brendan Smith to keep Capo Kako happy. But I do think that losing those types of veterans who didn't really have a lot going for them other than their personalities. And look, Brendan Smith, unmitigated failure as a Ranger. Really good first playoff run when he gets here. He comes into camp very out of shape, gets sent down to the AHL the next season. Tommy Novak, that if you were listening to Liberty Blue last season, you definitely heard Andrew and I bang the table for Tommy Novak as a potential addition at the deadline. But as we're simming here and the Predators are up 2-0 ahead of tonight's showdown in reality against the Rangers, the Predators are in a weird position as well where they had high expectations. But alas, this is a New York Rangers content platform. So you trade Kako's best friend on the team, Georgiev. Brendan Smith doesn't get brought back after that 2021 season. And you have a very young player who doesn't feel great about their game in an awkward social environment. And look, I am not saying the Rangers need to all be buddy-buddy. I am not saying the Rangers have a responsibility to keep everybody happy. But I do think the Rangers' lack of interest in managing that genuinely, managing the personalities and the locker room, is how you get here to the point where there is I can't call this an outright mutiny where guys are just outright giving up and not trying because of how fragile their confidence is. But if you're watching this team on a nightly basis at this point, the mistakes are abundant, the corrections are non-existent, and all of that is connected to attitude, mindset, preparation. And I don't think it's a stretch to say the Rangers very clearly are and were a fragile group over the last handful of seasons. If you want to subscribe to the theory that Barclay Goodrow and Jacob Trouba were the only thing holding this group back from oblivion, I think that's a stinging indictment of this team, that if you need guys to step up, then where are your guys? Because this gets back to what I have said for years. And this is true of every sport. This is not just the Rangers. This is not just a hockey problem. But if you are thinking, and I'm going to click over on my controller here, if you are thinking about this in terms of how the Rangers got to this point, and you want to look at it from the perspective of how everything gets bad so quickly, this is a group that was assembled very quickly. Short period of time. You think about it. Zibanejad, Kreider, long-term holdovers. Kreider's first taste of NHL action is 2012. Zibanejad gets to New York summer 2016. He plays the 16-17 season. That's his first season in New York. Then you start extrapolating outward. Panarin's first season is the fall of 2019. Vincent Trocheck, it's the fall of 2023. Lafreniere is drafted in 2020. Capo Kakko is drafted in 2019. Philip Hedl is drafted in 2018. Adam Edstrom is drafted, I believe it's 2021. It might have been 2022. Sam Carrick, a free agent, 2024. Riley Smith, a trade, 2024. Will Cooley is the Braden Schneider Lafreniere class. That's 2020. And this group gets thrown together very quickly. But part of that acceleration process and part of the Rangers front office's efforts to legitimize their team, and we've got Cooley fighting. I don't even know who 45 on Nashville is, in all honesty, but that type of stuff is the sign of a team that's trying. And as far as where we're at right now, this group was put together quickly, and I will say a little haphazardly, where coming off of 2017-2018 in 2018, 2019, where you stink. You are objectively one of the worst teams in the entire league. You trade JT Miller, Ryan McDonough, Rick Nash, Kevin Hayes, Matt Zuccarello, all in a 13, 14 month window. Everybody is okay with that. Every Rangers fan appreciates your transparency and addressing the fan base at large and telling us, hey, we're going to trade some guys, we're going to take a step back. That's fine. The problem starts when you go and get Trouba, when you drop in Panarin. And look, it's water under the bridge at this point. Whenever you have the opportunity to add a top 10, 15 player in the sport, like Panarin's been during his tenure in New York, you know, he's been an MVP finalist twice in his 5+ years here in New York now. Anytime you can add a player that talented to your team, I don't think it's unreasonable that you think you can figure that part out later. The problem for me becomes when you try and force people into roles they are not adequate for. I said it a million times in 2021 on Upper Bowl GM, the podcast I was doing before Liberty Blue. I've said it at least 1,000 times in the 4 years since it happened. If the Rangers had a bona fide, unquestioned leader in their room, people like Tony DeAngelo, people like Brendan Lemieux would not have acted the way they did when they were Rangers. Because if you have ever been on a team, everybody has an understanding of the pecking order. The better you are as a player, and Lausanne makes it 3-0 Predators, the better you are as a player, the more respect you command, the more effort you put in, your willingness to give up your body, your well-being for your teammates to play well. That is something that commands respect. But if you are in a room, and when I say a room, I mean a dressing room, a locker room. When you are in a room with a guy who is good, and look, as much as Tony DeAngelo stinks in the present, there's a reason he's in Russia, he had enough potential that the Rangers, the Coyotes, the Lightning, the Flyers, and the Hurricanes twice were all willing to give him a chance, but only in New York did it get to a point where there was an actual issue, and that stems from a person not understanding their place and a vacuum, and it's 4-0 Luke Evangelista, who another interesting player on the Nashville forward group, who 9 goals this season, good for him. The problem is, and I said this when they added Gaudreau, when they added Reeves, when they added Sammy Blais, it's the same thing when they added Jacob Trouba. When you import guys from other places, that is not a guarantee that they are going to be as effective at what made them good in those other places as they are when they get here. Because Trouba, you know, on a team with Blake Wheeler, who was the captain of the Jets when Trouba got traded to the Rangers, somebody who ultimately became a Ranger later on down the road, someone I am not particularly interested in as a leader because of how things ended in Winnipeg. You have to remember, Paul Maurice, before winning the Stanley Cup with Florida and going to the Cup final the year before, he walked away from the Jets. That's how bad that situation was where Blake Wheeler was the captain, that room was more or less given up, and that was a byproduct of Blake Wheeler's leadership style. And look, I have no qualm with Blake Wheeler. I don't think he's the reason the Rangers were great last year or are struggling this year. But the Rangers don't have someone who they can lean on. And part of that is a failure in your roster construction, that you misidentified people you thought had potential to be strong leaders. And Sam Carrick, the one guy on the Rangers who's taken the puck to the net, not great, but it is what it is at this point. The Rangers are reaching a point now where it feels like it could be any day. You know, I made the allusion to the Bill Simmons reference of the Tyson zone, that anything you tell me about the Rangers might be true. You know, I won't call it a report because I don't think the Steve Dangle podcast is in the business of breaking news, because they're not reporters, they're content people. But they said there was a closed doors meeting, players only, that they were complaining about the general manager, that they were complaining about the way Chris Drury has handled Trouba, Gaudreau, and this season derailing, that Kreider's name was out there as far as being available for a potential trade. All of that tells me two things. Number one, it tells me this group is not in a place where they can get where they need to go. It tells me that there is a fundamental breakdown in the communication system here where the players don't trust the coach, the players don't trust the general manager, and all of that interconnectedness has bled into the team itself. Leadership, team is a reflection of leadership. And right now, as much as Chris Drury wants to pretend this isn't his mess, and you see it based on whose stuff you're reading, you see Larry Brooks very passionately banging the desk saying that the Rangers are the problem. The players don't care. They're moping. They're not giving requisite effort to be successful, and they're letting Will Cooley, the one Ranger who wants to be here, who's putting in an effort on a nightly basis. I appreciate you, Will Cooley. But when you look at it from a 10,000-foot view, what do we think is more likely? Which of the following makes more sense to you? Do you think that this team that has had the success it's had the last 3 seasons, 2 conference finals, a playoff berth, a President's Trophy, do you think it is more likely that those guys that had all of that success suddenly forgot how to play hockey at a reasonable level? And look, I know Zibanejad and Trocheck are in the age range where we could start discussing age-related decline. Zibanejad's edge stats are a smidge slower. He's down a couple percentiles in terms of top skating speed, but I don't think these guys entirely forgot how to play hockey in the offseason. I think there's a combination of long-term issues that have slowly but surely creeped in that have made the Rangers susceptible to Will Cooley. How about that? Now, that is something I would like to see. It's not a great sign, and this is something Andrew and I have talked about a lot over the last 2 weeks. It's not great that the Rangers' most active and noticeable guys are all the children. God bless Cooley, Hedl. I don't think Kakko deserves to be scratched. I know a lot of people dislike Kakko for not being what he was supposed to be as a second overall pick, but he's trying. He is giving you the best he can. I cannot say the same for Kreider, for Trocheck, for Zibanejad. I would say for Panarin, but Panarin hasn't played the last 2 games. He's not going to play again tonight. This is a team where I feel the Rangers have reached an inflection point. And I said it 2 years ago after they lost to the Devils. I said it this year, this past spring, June. I forget when that series ended. I want to say the last week of May. Riley Smith, 4-3, 3 unanswered. All right, the Rangers are in this game. That's something. The computer, the EA Sports NHL New York Rangers are showing an awful lot more fight than the actual real-life New York Rangers. But that's a nice tuck from Riley Smith right there. The Rangers are reaching a point where there has to be change. And we all understand that change for the sake of change is a very, very dangerous proposition. Because that's where you as a general manager get taken advantage of. When you go and look at the mistakes the Rangers have made over the last handful of seasons, the most stinging is obviously the Buchnevich one, because that was change for the sake of change. It was, well, the Rangers have never won anything with this guy on the team, as opposed to the Rangers haven't won anything during this period of time. And I think that's a misunderstanding of what didn't work while Buchnevich was here. And I think it's very ironic that the most difficult roster spot the Rangers have struggled to fill since his absence is that spot that they've tried 20-something different right wings with Kreider and Zibanejad at 5-on-5, and none of them have been nearly as successful as Buchnevich, because Buchnevich did the dirty work. He was a carrier through the neutral zone. He was somebody that could facilitate playmaking and somebody who could shoot with relative high quality, and somebody who was a potential point-per-game player who had strong defensive impacts. And instead, they've moonlighted a lot of different guys in that spot, whether it's the Frank Vetranos, the Blake Wheelers, the Barclay Goodrows, the Kakkos, the Lafrenières. They have tried a lot of different pieces with those guys, and nothing has really gotten through. And if you're at the point where you're like me, and you feel like the players have been babied too much over the last few years, that the Rangers haven't been as aggressive as they've needed to be. You know, if you were like me and you were pounding the desk to give up the farm for Jake Gensel last year, you feel pretty validated right now that Zibanejad over Eichel? Come on. If you are a person who is reasonable, you can understand the Rangers' proposition, what they thought they were going to do. The last 3 years have been very emblematic of the organizational philosophy. That first year, Shesterkin puts together one of the all-time great goaltending seasons. He puts together something that's really hard to do. And the Rangers front office took that as a validation of what they were doing. The Rangers took that as an opportunity to double down on what they perceived to have worked that year. So what did they do after adding Blais, Reeves, Nemeth, etc.? Well, they went out. They got Vincent Trocheck. Somebody who fits a little bit more of that rugged identity. You know, we know the Rangers love themselves a good American boy. You know, the Rangers have always, especially in the last 10 to 15 years, they've coveted American-born, North American-born players for whatever reason, been more fortuitous in giving them opportunities, the most obvious being Jimmy Vesey over Buchnevich, who obviously Jimmy Vesey's not as talented as Buchnevich, but the Rangers, they gave Vesey more run during the early stages when they were both new on the team, and that was a reflection of what was to come. Because sitting here right now, I understand and I empathize a lot more with Capo Caco feeling frustrated that he's being held out to dry and he's being made to wear the blame for this, when it's not his fault the rest of the team isn't playing well. And sure, you can say, well, we wanted fresh legs, whatever. Capo Caco is a better hockey player than Jimmy Vesey. This is not an argument. There is no argument. And, well, you could say, well, Vesey plays a more specialized role. He kills penalties. He's more defensively responsive. All that's great. Caco's impact at offense on 5-on-5 is more important right now than defense. And look, I understand the Rangers defense is an atrocity. This is Ryan Sproul, Rob O'Gara levels of bad on the back end. But at a certain point, if we're going to be bad defensively anyway, we should do what we can to facilitate more offense, because that's what's going to help us win hockey games when our defense is broken. Doubling and tripling down on defense when we can't even play average or adequate defense is a fool's errand. And with no Panarin, I think we all need to taper our expectations a little bit. Kakko's going back in the lineup tonight against Nashville, so I don't necessarily think the Rangers are going to trade him. And at a certain point, a player is what they are. And I think a lot of people look at that as a drawback, a negative, and maybe even an insult. But at a certain point, you are what you are. We could say that about Kakko, about K'Andre Miller, about Chris Drury, about the Rangers at large. At a certain point, it's Chris Drury's fault for allowing this perception, this attitude to permeate amongst the guys on the team. Because you didn't address the problems with the team after the first conference finals exit. You really didn't address them after you lost to the Devils. And you didn't address them after you lost to the Panthers. You have made marginal changes. You have made interesting changes. You know, Trocheck for Strome, that's a win. Riley Smith for Blake Wheeler, that's a win. But you did not address the undercurrent issues that have plagued the team for 4 seasons. You knew that Jacob Trouba's skills were beginning to deteriorate. You ran the risk when you extended Mika Zibanejad and you gave Trocheck the long-term extension you did. And you could throw Kreider in there as well, even though I don't think Kreider is as emblematic of the bigger issues. When you gave those guys those contracts, you ran the risk of understanding how age curves work. You knew you were building your team around 4 forwards in their early 30s in Zibanejad, Trocheck, Kreider, and Panarin. And when you do that, you have to assume the risk. And I understand that we're never going to know what happened as far as Jack Eichel, RE the Rangers. The assumption is that Terry Pegula just didn't want him in the Eastern Conference at all, so there was basically nothing the Rangers could have done. But you think about it from the perspective of what could have been, where the Rangers could have had Eichel, 2C down the middle, probably Hedl, unless Hedl goes in the trade. Maybe it's Hedl. So in a hypothetical world where you go Eichel, Hedl down the middle, you still have Buchnevich, you still have Kreider, you still have Panarin. Do you feel better about that group right now as we're sitting here? A little bit, yeah, because even though Eichel's not putting up the counting stats, his defense has taken a really noticeable leap the last 2 years. I want to give Bruce Cassidy a lot of credit for getting somebody like Eichel, who's been perceived to be a defensive liability, to fully commit to playing great 200-foot defense. But as we wrap up here in the last 10, 15 minutes of the simulation, I do want the Rangers, and I want the people listening to this, to think about what you want. Because the Rangers have been presented these types of opportunities before where they could address the underlying fundamental issue. You know, if they had started this offseason and come out and said, we were close to beating Florida, but we didn't have the right mix of guys. And if we want to get through to that next tier of Stanley Cup contender, if we want to win the Stanley Cup, we're going to have a long and honest look at what our team is and what we're doing to be successful. Because when you are that close, it's very easy to feel like you did everything you could. And I'm not here to say the Rangers left something on the table against Florida or against Tampa Bay 2 years ago. But when you think about the way some of those games developed, some of the breakdowns, some of the mistakes, it's not impossible to get to the place where you feel like all you needed was another bounce or two. The problem with that mindset, and why I think the Rangers made a mistake in assuming that they were right there, that, you know, they were that close, I don't think it was an accurate or honest reflection. Ooh, the Rangers coming back from 4-0 down on 2 Will Cooley goals and Adam Edstrom goal. God bless. What a comeback for the virtual Rangers. Look, if this happens tonight where the Rangers get down big and they come back big the way they just did in the simulation, we can have a conversation about showing some guts. But winning this game tonight effectively does nothing as far as quelling the nerves, because Nashville stinks and it's one game and you haven't really shown me a lot. But as far as what I was saying before, the big picture before we wrap up, the Rangers could have come out after they lost to Florida and said, we got to 6 games against the eventual Stanley Cup champions. We were really close, but this is our second time in 3 years where we have hit a wall in the conference finals. And if we want to break through, we need to fundamentally reimagine what our hockey team can be. That means maybe we have to trade someone who's very well liked, who is loved, someone who has been a contributor here for a number of years. You know, whether that was a Chris Kreider trade or an Alexis Lafreniere trade prior to that extension, or if it was Kakko, or if it was Braden Schneider or Ryan Lindgren, or if we're talking about it in the context of what they actually did, if they had come out and said at the end of the season, we really appreciate what these guys meant to our team during our transition process from young and plucky to serious contender in regards to Gaudreau and in regards to Trouba, it would have been a lot easier for the Rangers to manage this. Because the Rangers managed this PR-wise the way they did, they put themselves in a position where they could not have it both ways. They tried to trade Trouba and then insisted they didn't. They lied to everybody. They absolutely lied to everybody back at the draft when they said we never tried to trade him. They absolutely lied. And as much as Larry Brooks has been clowned over the last few weeks for his Brady Tkachuk report, I think he was absolutely right as far as Trouba saying he would refuse to report. I know I read that in The Athletic, in The Athletic the other day, that kind of seems to be the prevailing sentiment, that the Rangers told Trouba, we want to trade you. And then he said, well, I'm not going there. And Capo Kakko returning to the lineup with a goal, very sorely needed. The Rangers in the simulation are doing a fantastic job of proving me wrong. If the real-life Rangers can do that, that would be really nice. It would be really fun if the real-life Rangers could put together a game like this where they showed some grit, they showed some heart, because they have really struggled to even be passably resemble a competitive hockey team the last few games. You know, that game against the Kings last Saturday is an atrocity, an absolute, utter atrocity, to charge people $180 to get in the building for that game and then to lay a total egg. And look, the Kings aren't bad. The Kings might be the best defensive team in the entire NHL, but they have not, the Rangers are not playing competitive hockey. The last thing, as we wind down the last 5 minutes of this game here. Ooh, nice hit on the forecheck from Trocheck. But the last big point here. I think this reaches a breaking point, and soon. If you go and look at the Rangers schedule, I don't know if you picked that up if you're listening right now, if you just heard my stomach gurgle, but God, am I hungry. If you look at the Rangers schedule over the next few weeks, it is a bloodbath. My goal is to keep doing these, is to keep simming a game on game day in NHL, talk about the news of the day. But the Rangers don't go back out there again until, I think, Friday against the Stars. I want to say Friday against the Stars. I think the 20th. So today's Tuesday, 18th, 19th. Yeah, so Friday against the Stars, I'll do another stream. We'll sim that game. But after that, man, after tonight against Nashville, Dallas, who's in a playoff spot, was in the conference finals last year. Carolina, second-round playoff team last year. The Devils, who missed the playoffs but have shown real signs of improvement. The Lightning, who are a playoff team last year and are showing signs of improvement. Florida, defending Cup champions. Boston, playoff team last year, got to the second round. Washington, playoff team last year, best team in the East so far. Lafreniere, nice goal. Caught your break, you get the Blackhawks. Your next easy game is not until January 5th. It is December 17th. After tonight, you have 2 straight weeks of games against teams that are in playoff spots right now. And then after that, Dallas again, who is in a playoff spot, really good team. New Jersey again, really good team. Vegas, who's a really good team. Colorado, who not as good this year as years past, but still a decent team. Then your break comes. You don't have an easy stretch of games again until a month from yesterday. Your next easy stretch of games, Utah, Colorado, Montreal, Ottawa, Philly, is not start until January 16th. The Rangers have played miserable hockey for 2.5, 3 weeks now. It has reached a breaking point where something fundamentally has to change. And that's largely been against easy opposition. You know, you go a month back, we go to November 17th. Seattle, Vancouver. Okay, Vancouver was the last time I felt reasonably okay. Calgary, Edmonton, St. Louis. Edmonton will make the playoffs. Calgary might if things keep staying funky. Carolina, playoff team. You lost to Philly, who's not a playoff team. You beat Montreal by the skin of your teeth, who's one of the worst teams in the league. You got smoked by the Devils, who are going to be a playoff team. You beat Pittsburgh, who not great, but playing better hockey as of late. So that's an okay win. You lose 7-5 to Seattle, who's not a playoff team. You lose 2-1 to the Blackhawks, who were the worst team in the league when you lost to them. You barely beat Buffalo, who's mired in their own identity crisis as well. They are experiencing the magic of Lindy Ruff hockey. You lose to the Kings, who are in a playoff spot. And you lose to the Blues, who are not in a playoff spot. This is going to get as gritty and gut check as it can possibly be in professional hockey. You have not played good hockey in close to a month. You have had easy-ish games. The road is about to become a whole lot tougher. If you are a Ranger fan, you need to hope Artemi Panarin comes back, and you need to hope that whatever bells and whistles they try to get back into this group, to get through to them, that whatever buttons Drury and Laviolette push, they can wake Zibanejad up. They can wake Kreider up. They can wake Trocheck up. They can wake Lafreniere up. That's a really nice block there by Nashville to keep the empty netter out. But it does look like our virtual Rangers are going to win this game. And I'm going to leave you guys with this. If you're going to watch tonight's game, and I will because I'm a sicko, I still got to go to the gym after streaming this. But once I go to the gym, I'm going to come back. I'm going to eat dinner. I'm going to settle in. If you are a Ranger fan listening to this, watching this, you want the Rangers to lose this game because you need this noise to come to a boiling point that it cannot sustain itself anymore. Because living like this, through the news drops, through the tidbits that you're able to get, No team is going to be successful with this environment around them. And that starts with the general manager, who has allowed these leaks to trickle out because he is trying to effectively bully them into playing better through negative reinforcement. And because of that, it's put them in a position where they are beyond frazzled, and it's not getting back on the tracks. 80 hits. My goodness, the simulation in this game is horrendous. How do you possibly have 141 combined hits in 10-minute periods? But whatever. The Rangers play Nashville in a little under 2 hours on the East Coast. I'm going to watch. I'm a sicko. My plan is to do another one of these before the game against the Stars on Friday. I will talk to you guys then, unless there's breaking news. You know, if the general manager or the coach gets fired, if there's a trade, Andrew and I will try to go live, assuming we're not, out, assuming it's not a Friday or a Saturday night. If I'm at the bar Saturday and they trade somebody or someone gets fired in the middle of Penn State SMU or Ohio State Tennessee, and I have to do a stream live in a crowded bar, sure, I'll do it. But hopefully we can start to get this back on the tracks. There are an awful lot of hockey games to go. They have 52 more of these things. I will talk to you guys soon. Everyone have fun, safe night, and hopefully the Rangers lose. If you want change, you want the Rangers to lose. I'll talk to you guys soon.